Hey, good evening. So we'll go ahead and get started. If anybody hasn't, please go ahead and sign in. Looks like we're doing that. So we'll go ahead and get started. It is going to be a jam-packed couple hours here. So hopefully you all will enjoy it. Please go ahead and participate. We'll have some areas for you to ask questions. We'll have some quizzes, and there will also be a survey at the end of this. This is going to be our very, very first Citizens Academy like this, and we planned on it being a little bit longer, but with the transition and some of the other things that have occurred, we are condensing it to sort of your intro to Citizens Academy, which is tonight, with the idea that there will be more in-depth classes and so forth in the future, as well as having this one repeated in the future, depending on the community interest. So I want to thank you all for coming. I'm Kelsey Young, and I am currently the City of Sweet Home City Manager. You're going to be hearing from quite a few staff members and really looking forward to this. All right. So a couple things of housekeeping. Like I mentioned, we are going to be going into more depth in the future sessions, and we will also have a survey. When you do ask questions, we do want to hear questions and comments and stuff, but please be respectful. This is going to be a really quick session, but we also have opportunity to go into more depth in the future. Keep going. So there we go. So just a quick thing with the agenda. We're doing the introduction right now. Each staff member is going to introduce themselves as they start their section as well. But then we're going to be going into government roles, communication, talking about each department, including administrative services, the police department, the library, KED, Public Works. Then we're going to talk about the opportunities for volunteering, and then we'll just close it out. KED is Community and Economic Development Department, which is, yes. Okay, so I'm going to start out with just a very basic thing about government, kind of how it works and some of the roles. So there are various levels of government. Oh, I did want to mention too, are we recording this? We are recording this. We are not streaming it, but we are recording it for future use. So just want to make sure you all are aware of that. Okay, so levels of government. So as a city and as a municipality, we have our own government here, but we also have to adhere to all federal, state, and county rules. We are never able to circumvent those rules. Those rules continue to govern us. So even if there's a federal law that doesn't feel like it should have to necessarily pertain to us, we are a city in the United States of America, and therefore we have to adhere to those laws. Each state also has their own sets of laws, which we also have to adhere to. Same with the county and so forth. Now, where it gets a little bit different is we are a municipality, but then there's also special districts. Special districts typically have to adhere to our municipality laws as well as whatever type of county rules that they are engaged in, as well as their own. So one of the things we keep hearing, go ahead, Adam, is, well, but we are a home rule city. And we are. And that is an awesome thing to be. What that means, though, is it means that after we've had the federal laws and the state laws and the county laws, we as a city may add additional laws. It doesn't mean that we can change any of the laws above us. We are the low people on the totem pole, and I apologize if that's not accurate or something I'm not supposed to say, but we are low down on the list of what's allowed. And so we have to adhere to all of that. So we can make it more restrictive. We cannot make it less restrictive. And we also can do things like we can add codes. So there is state building code that we have to adhere to, but we can add our own sweet home codes as well. And then we also, and this is an important piece, may develop a charter. And our charter is how we run our council and our staff, and we adhere to those particular rules and policies within the city of Sweet Home. I'm not going to read all of this because none of us want me to do that, myself included. But this is just talking about the limitations of power. And this is exactly where we're talking about those particular laws and why it is that we can't do that. As much as we would like to go ahead and modify the laws to just suit Sweet Home and to suit me, we can't do that. So this is the limitations of power. We are going to be sharing all of this information. So if you guys want to go back and look at some of this or look some of this up, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so this is a super cute graphic. So this is more or less how our city runs, right? We've got the Sweet Home people, and you all in the community are the ones who choose to elect your city council members. And then you are also the ones who communicate your requests and requirements to those city council members. The city council has the mayor as the lead of the city council, but we'll get into more what that looks like in the future. Then the city council directs the city manager, which is currently me, which means each council member is 1/7 of my boss. And altogether, they make up my boss. Then, as city manager, I have the awesome job of getting to work with a tremendous team of the police chief, the public works director, the finance director, the communications, the community and economic development director, the library service director, the administrative services director, our communications team, and our tourism and business coordinator, whose role is also changing. So I oversee the various departments, but everything that I do comes from direction from City Council, and everything that City Council does should be direction from the community of Sweet Home. Okay, so we have what is called a council manager form of government in Sweet Home. There's two real ways that you see cities, smaller cities in particular, run. One is with a mayor council form of government, where it's like in the TV shows that you see sometimes, where there's a mayor who is the one who directs everything. And that is something that is actually rarely seen in real life. What most cities have, not all, but what most cities have is a council manager form of government, which means that, which is what Sweet Home has, and most cities in Oregon have that. In fact, most cities in the United States, but Oregon in particular. And it means that the council as a whole decides the direction of the city. And then the city manager, it's a partnership, directs staff and does the operations. So the council, in essence, decides the what. What is it that the city is going to focus on? What are the goals? What are the projects? So forth. And then the city manager with staff decides how to carry out that direction. So there's a few weird quirks with all of this that are set up in our charter, and that is pretty typical for all cities, and that council may not direct staff directly, and that the council may only direct the manager if the majority is in agreement. Going. So our counselors, and we have some here, so thank you for being here, have a lot of roles and responsibilities. And it's a very tough job being a counselor. You are expected to hear the community's concerns and make sure to understand what the majority of the community is concerned about or is directing. And then share information and events with the community. You know, they're the liaison, right? So the council members both share with the community what's going on, but then they also get input from the community on what direction they would like the city to go. They have to read and know the agenda items and then vote on them. And they vote on the agenda items in a way that supports the majority of the community. And then also, when we're talking about how council is the one who sets the policy, how they do that is by recommending additional agenda items and asking for those to be on there as well. And then they also serve as liaisons on various committees. Keep going. Okay, so in Sweet Home, we have what is called a weak mayor form of government. That doesn't mean our mayor is weak. In fact, our mayor is awesome. But it means that the mayor doesn't necessarily have any additional duties. So the mayor is the chair of the council meeting. I mean, there are some, but it's not as in that they get to direct the city. So the mayor's the chair of the council meeting and runs the meeting. And while any council member should reach out to the city manager, and most do, the mayor is often the main liaison with the city manager. And then the mayor may call an executive session in the middle of a council meeting. The mayor votes like any other council member, but they also have the opportunity to break a tie should that happen. And then the mayor sets up committees, and the mayor is a ceremonial leader of the city. So giving speeches and reaching out and being in the news and things like that is often the mayor's role as well. So city manager versus the mayor. And I'll just go through this really, really quickly because we already kind of talked about it. But city manager mostly directs staff. The mayor is not able to direct staff except through the city manager. The city manager sets the agenda, but in coordination with the mayor and making sure that they're working together and in concert, as the mayor then directs the agenda throughout the council meeting. City manager in charge of all day-to-day operations. Mayor is not allowed by charter to interfere with those operations. City manager sets the budget. The mayor, along with council, votes to approve the budget, and in both budget committee and in the council meetings. The city manager, on the other hand, has zero opportunity to vote in council meetings. The city manager does not vote in council meetings, whereas the mayor may go ahead and vote in the council meetings along with the rest of the councilors. And then city manager directs staff, and then the mayor makes sure that the council meetings move together. However, the mayor doesn't have any more power over the other councilors than any other councilor does. Keep going. Okay, so we talk a lot about policy versus operations, but what does that actually mean, right? So one of the differences, or one of the examples, is a policy is council would decide to designate more funds to roads. For example, they also are the ones who would approve the roads contract. Whereas in operations side, staff would go ahead and solicit and negotiate the contract to build the roads. And then once council has already approved that contract, then staff would make sure that that contract was followed out the way that council directed, and would then provide barricades or whatever type of other operational support. So one of the things, if you have concerns or there are things that you want to see happening in the city, one of the things that's really important is to talk to your council members about it. And particularly when it comes to policy questions, why don't we spend more on parks? Or ideas, I would love to see a splash pad. Or requests, like I just mentioned as well. Hey, look at that. We would like to see more parks, or, wanting to see more funding spent on roads or things along those lines. Where you want to meet with staff more are questions about how often do we clean the bathrooms at the parks? What type of equipment is happening? And then when it comes to the processes and the procedures, we can't decide on those, but we are very knowledgeable about them because we oversee them getting carried out. Okay, so the role of city manager, because I know when I was in elementary school, actually, I think even through high school, I wasn't even aware of what a city manager really did. So what the role of city manager is to carry out what council decides and dictates and to manage the operational side. So the city manager only has the authority to carry out what council has told them to carry out and what has already been budgeted for them to do so. So then the city manager handles the operations of going ahead and moving those projects forward. So what does a city manager do? Typically, city manager pays for themselves. And that is one of the things that you want to make sure in a city manager. Part of that, like in my case, I pay for myself 10 times over each year. Which also means as in the next transition, our new city manager will have a little while before they need to really worry about that. It is part of the role, though, is you bring in a fair amount of funding, you partner with different agencies, and you keep things going. We're going to talk a lot more about budget in just a little bit. But the other piece that the city manager does is oversees the budget. Typically have a finance director who is the one who builds it. And the city manager make sure that it's all going to be appropriate, looks at every single department and make sure those things are there, and then continues to oversee the budget throughout the year to make sure that we are spending within budget or possibly saving. Then it also directs the directors, creates additional funding opportunities like we just talked about, oversees operations, and creates relationships with other agencies. Creating relationships with other agencies is one of the biggest, most important tasks of a city manager, as well as the city in general, because being able to have partnerships with Linn County, for example, or other agencies provides opportunities for additional funding, provides opportunities for support, and so forth. It's extremely important. And then, of course, as we already talked about, carries out council direction. Okay, so again, role of council regarding staff. Council as a whole directs the city manager. The city manager directs the directors who then direct their departments. Again, council cannot direct staff except through the council agenda in a public meeting. So as we already talked about, contacting your council members is the perfect way to keep your ideas and thoughts and concerns moving forward with the city as a whole, because that's how they direct policy. But just be aware that they're not involved in day-to-day operations. So asking staff those questions will provide the most current answer. And then you really do want to go to them with the large concerns, because council creates goals, which then create the budget, which then create the agenda items, which then create the projects. So sort of your basic rundown of how stuff gets done in the city. Okay, by state and federal law, which is sort of what we just talked about with the federal and home rule and our all of that, council and many committee members, we do have some, can only be filled with people within city limits. That's not something that the city is able to change. That is something that is dictated by state and federal law. Council has to be filled within city limits. And part of that is because no one outside of the city limits pays taxes into the city limits. Representation is reserved for those inside of city limits. Whole big war in the 1700s fought about this. So where does the city get its money, right? And that is probably the question that I think most people have. And if you don't, well, you should, unless you don't care about money, the way I do at least. So what's surprising, I think, is that there isn't money coming from as many places as you would expect. So our local taxes, and this is the property taxes of both businesses and residential houses, only comes to about $880,000 per year. It's actually, and that's actually gone up a little bit because we've gotten some more housing in. Intergovernmental funding, our investments, and the grants that we get are about 1.1. It was a little bit higher last year or so as well. Then we have charges for services. This is just our general. We're going to talk about our enterprise in just a second. Then we have our license, permits, and fees. And then again, we have some additional investments. Then we have from the state gas tax that comes into the city that's allocated to each city from an overall larger pot. And then that comes in for transportation. Then we have our enterprise funds. And this is one of the areas that Sweet Home is able to have revenue that we need. And that's with water, sewer, and storm. And all of this is how we fund both getting water to your houses, building the infrastructure, building the water treatment centers, updating the pipes, and then with sewer, building the wastewater treatment centers. So even though we actually have a sustainable enterprise funds in each of the areas, the cost of the infrastructure keeps growing. And it's one of those things that is quite challenging. If we look at our sewer, our wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at a $65 million project. So part of what we have to figure out is how to use something that's where we're getting about $3 million per year to fund the $65 million project. So that's another piece that we're doing. And we have our plan. We're going to be doing WIFIA, and that's going to be actually a loan that'll be coming forward. We'll build our plant. That loan will be deferred. This money will continue to come in. You saw already that we are making investments that is bringing in revenue. By using that revenue, we're going to be able to build up that pot, start paying back our loan. So, but all of this is really challenging. So how does the city get more money? As we mentioned, we have a very small amount of taxes coming in for general services. That doesn't talk about our levies, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And that is, our levies are what solely fund our library and our police department. We're very unusual in Sweet Home for being structured that way. It's kind of terrifying. If, as citizens, you ever decide you don't want to vote for the levy for our police department, we don't have a police department at all. At the same time, this does make it so that we are a little bit more fluid. We are able to fund our police department. We're very fortunate to have a citizen group that supports our police department, and that's not cannibalizing our general fund. Other cities where that is the case, it's even harder to fund all of this. So water and sewer and stormwater are paid for by rates, as you saw, and roads are paid for by the gas tax that we talked about. Otherwise, anything that we want to build or do, we have to come up with other additional funding sources. So the grants that I was talking about, when I talked about how, I bring in 10 times my salary, a lot of that is working on bringing in grants, finding savings, bringing in additional revenue sources. So comparative costs. Somebody asked the other day about us going painting the road and why were we painting stripes as opposed to fixing things. And it's a valid question, why are we? But one of the things to understand is that the cost of paint is only going to be a couple $100s. One of the other questions I get is, why are we spending money on parks when our roads need to be fixed? And also valid, but part of it too is we can build actually fairly cute little community park for around $25,000, whereas $25,000 on a road would probably just cover about this size right here. If we start building parks, we're increasing our livability. When we increase our livability, we have developers who want to come in. When we have developers want to come in, we have additional housing. Those houses pay additional property taxes, rates, support our businesses, SDCs, and all of the things that have to happen in order to have a healthy infrastructure. So by increasing parks, in fact, there's a direct correlation between the number of parks per capita and the appeal of living in a community. Our current community is way below that line, but we're slowly building things up. So keep going. I'm getting little notices too, because I'm taking up my time. Everyone else is going to have to talk really fast. So how much do roads cost? Full depth reclamation is about 1.5 to 2.5 million per mile. So when you want us to fix roads, we do too. Just be aware, to just get a mile of roads, we're looking at about $2.5 million to get it fully done. An overlay is less, it's around 200 to 300 per mile, but still, even a speed table, a speed bump in a road or something along those lines is $10,000 each. So how much do parks cost? Like we talked about, small playground around 20 to 40, larger playground about 100,000 to 1 million. Splash pads. We all want a splash pad. They are so expensive. Typically, your good splash pads end up being around $500,000 and up. Sometimes you can find cheaper ones, but even like the one in Albany that was just done, it was about 6.3 million. Oh, a splash pad is one of those fun parks. My kids used to love them, where the water comes out of the ground and there's little play structures and big bucket of water gets dumped on your head. That whole thing. Yeah. Let's see. I don't think so, but I'll try to do this a little bit more. Okay. Okay, cool. We'll work on that. So when you're looking at economic development, right, we already talked about livability, but when you're trying to make sure to have a community that is going to continue with economic development and grow, there's three main key tools, and those are talent retention, keeping people, developing a strong workforce, keeping our youth in our community, working on workforce, having jobs that keep talent here. Another one is strong quality of a place. We mentioned parks. Parks are almost always talked about, but then also having property that people want to go to, a downtown that people want to visit, a community center. All of those things help with economic development and with that livability piece. Then human capital. Volunteerism. Sweet Home is fantastic in that we have a lot of people who want to volunteer here in Sweet Home. Keeping that positivity and welcoming environment. I am often asked, how can we make our community more welcoming? And part of that is just creating that welcoming environment where we do welcome people into our projects, our committees, our council, and so forth. Okay, so how can you help? So volunteering, as we just talked about, is a huge thing, and pretty much everybody here, I know you're already interested in doing things or you wouldn't be here. Sharing accurate information. We live in a land of crazy social media where inaccurate information can just spread anywhere. So trying to make sure that you're sharing accurate information is really critical. Running for office. We are about to have some potential openings for council. If you're not interested in council, being on a committee is a way to really make sure that your voice is getting heard. Being patient, and then also speaking up when you are seeing something that's not going the way that it should be. Okay, so working with the city. Be aware that there's only a few of us and there's over 10,000 residents. So it can be a little time consuming at times. So make sure you plan on plenty of time. If you want to get a plan approved, for example, please don't expect it to be approved in that one day. It's going to take a longer process because there's all of those laws that we already talked about that have to be reviewed. Be aware the city wants to work with you. Most laws are out of control, out of our control. We have to just follow them. And that council approves the codes, fees, and rules that are within the city's control. So asking staff to change one of those is not something that can be done. It would need to go back to council as part of that process. And that staff can only carry out what council has approved. So please be kind to staff. All right. Another thing that's unexpected is we talk about this a lot. We are constantly working. I mean, I work every weekend. It's just the amount of hours we all have to put in to all of this to keep the city running is fairly excessive. Some of the things that we don't expect, like we expect to carry out our projects. We know we have budget. We know we have all of these other things. But other things that are unexpected are things like cleaning up social media. Somebody puts out misinformation and we spend the next 2 weeks trying to explain what actually happened. Again, sometimes we will get individual demands. We're not able to drop everything to create reports for one individual. These are things that we try to put as much information out on our website. We try to provide it in budget reports and so forth, but just being aware that we probably aren't going to be able to drop everything to take care of your individual request unless it's something that we can do for the greater community. Empty buildings. So when we have empty buildings or vacant buildings, these are buildings that, while they may be paying that small amount of property tax that we talked about, they're not necessarily going to be paying rates. They're not going to be bringing in additional revenue. They're not going to be helping with that livability factor. All of this is something that is challenging for our city. Events. We love events. Events are great, and they can bring in a lot of additional revenue and additional people. Just be aware that when we're looking at them, most events end up having a cost until they get to the point that they can start being sustainable. And then visitors out of city limits. Again, we love having visitors. We love having additional people, having people coming in, but it is a wear and tear on our infrastructure. And so being able to look at ways to be working with those visitors that are coming in to hopefully then have them spend money in our cities, or supporting some of that is all really, really important to us keeping our economy going. And then asking productive questions. We love questions. It's really good. This is why we're having you all here, is because we want to be able to talk about what is going on in Sweet Home, and we want you to be involved. But we also ask that you ask questions to the city directly. Or the other community pages on social media, we don't control. We'll talk about that more. So putting something out just on a Facebook page as opposed to calling us to get the accurate information, sometimes things can get misconstrued. And then also we have a ton of information on our city website. It's a little cumbersome, but checking that for information, there's a lot there. And then just be aware that sometimes answers take time. Okay, so like we said, we serve the community as a whole. We do tend to be a little bit overextended. Being kind to staff helps staff stay longer, and turnover costs an average of 40% of salary at a minimum. And then relationships are key to funding, and that's within the city, being able to work with other agencies, being able to work with other partnerships such as the county or the state and so forth. ODOT. And then, okay, before I go into emergency management, are there any other questions? Yeah. Okay, so that's a really good question, because gas tax is going down, and we do rely on gas tax. Do you want me to summarize it for the recording? Okay, sure. I will try to do that. Okay, so the question is, what is the state going to do as gas tax decreases due to EV and other factors? And gas tax is definitely going down, and that is something that we are very concerned about. And honestly, that's something that the city should be concerned about. In the future, I think the city, the state as a whole, is going to need to look for additional revenue sources. But I also think each individual city should look for that as well. There are a couple options that the city could do. One would be to go ahead and implement a small local gas tax, a cent or two, that wouldn't necessarily be as wouldn't really impact local residents too much, but would capture some of the tourists that are coming through, because we are a road that has a ton of pass through. So that could be an option. Another option could be adding an additional utility cost, all sorts of things. But it can be but that's definitely something the city is going to have to look at. Yes. So the city currently only gets money from state gas tax, as far as gas tax is concerned. And that is figured out statewide and then allocated back to us. They are, but we don't quite know what direction they're going to be going just yet. And one of the areas where that's really challenging is in rural communities like ours, because we tend to get a smaller percentage of that to begin with. Any other questions? Yes. Okay, that is a good question. And Adam and Cecily, I get to take up as much time as I get to take up. Um, so we take in a very, very, very small percentage of property taxes. In fact, we take in 0.347%. So property taxes, Measure 50, and a whole bunch of other things all happened back in 1995, exactly. And what happened during that time period is they froze our percentage of revenue that we're going to be getting in from property taxes based on a rate that was already getting supplemented by the business that was occurring. In 1995, the city of Sweet Home was still more of a logging mill city. So our percentage got locked in at that time period at a lower rate than it probably would have 10 years later. So part of the reason why we have to have a levies for both of our police and library is the amount of revenue that we have coming in, that only 800,000 would be impossible for us to fund those particular departments. There's some more to it too, but the levies ended up coming out, and you'll see that in other cities as well, but not to the extent as Sweet Home, in order to be able to keep those services going. Yes. Okay. Okay. Urban growth boundary. Um, so Oregon also put something in called the Oregon growth boundary. I mean, the Oregon urban growth boundary that set up the limits for the size of the cities that we are allowed to grow within. So Sweet Home, we're actually a little bit better off than some cities because we still have undeveloped land that could be developed. In order to increase our urban growth boundary, there is, Blair and I have been talking about this a little bit, there is a small possibility of doing that, but most of that is already dictated by the state of Oregon. So we can grow within that growth boundary, but in order to actually grow without it, that's very, very complicated, and we don't know if it's even possible right now. Exactly. So, which is a little frustrating too. I mean, I love the idea of it. I remember learning about this in grad school, but when then you're actually in the actuality of it, it's very challenging because it ties our hands. Yes. We have a lot of land that could be developed. Yeah, okay. But how much is it too? If you remember? Yeah.
Property city, there's easily 500 acres.
But well, no, there's more than 500 acres.
That's a
Yeah. Yeah, within city limits. There is. It's just that land is privately owned too. So unless they choose to develop it into housing. Mhm. Yes. No, it's privately owned. Yeah, there is. Okay, so emergency management. And I'm going to go through this really fast. So, um, and then there'll be some more questions. Um, so emergency management in a city is a little bit different too than sometimes I think what you're thinking. When you think of emergency management, at least me, I'm always thinking of FEMA, fire district, what's going on, earthquakes, giant shelters, so forth. But really, each agency has their own role to play in case of an emergency. And what the role of a city is very, very specific. So what we currently have is we have a larger emergency management plan that is in conjunction with the rest of the county and our other agencies such as the fire district. We also have 2 cooling shelters right now, actually technically 3, but we have the PD and the library. And then if we need to, we have City Hall that we also open up. And then we have a whole bunch of wonderful agencies that we work with that we've got some great partnerships with. So, oh, that's small. Yeah. Yes. They'd also, and don't worry, we'll talk more. Okay. So, so our resources are ODF, so Oregon Department of Fire, forestry. It is forestry? And so this whole time I've been calling them fire and none of you have corrected me until now? Wow. Okay. Well, probably about the color of my jacket right now, but that's okay. Linn County, Sweet Home Fire District, then there's various state resources. And then one of the things that's wonderful about Sweet Home is our large amount of volunteers. And we'll be talking about that some more. So what is in the works? A COOP. What we don't have is a city operational, oh goodness, I want to call it a continuity, but it's a continuity of, no, Blair, you don't get to talk anymore. It's not helping. Anyway, it is continuity of operations plan. And we have a process that we're in the process of working on that. And just so you all know, while he's heckling me, you know who was supposed to have done this for the past 2 years and hasn't? So again, but it is in process. So then there's the CAP, so the city action plan. Sometimes they're called city emergency action plan, or a CEAP as well. And then thanks to Linn County and particularly to Eric Anderson, can you raise your hand? We now have a shelter trailer and an oxygen trailer that are coming to Sweet Home as well, so that we can actually do some of the evacuations and things that we need to do as we're moving forward. Nope. So whenever you're looking at emergency management, you want to be looking at prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and then recovery. Most of the time, we only are looking at the response and then the recovery. But trying to make sure that all of these pieces are in place beforehand is critical, which is one of the reasons why we're going to talk about this now. So keep going. So in the case of a big emergency, either a larger agency is going to take over, such as the fire district, ODF, FEMA, Linn County, and then the city manager typically is the emergency operations manager for the city, and then staff takes on all of the other key roles. So the executive team typically takes on communications, shelter management, coordinating with incident command, safety, finance, ordering equipment, any other piece that needs to occur. And that tends to change depending on what we have going on in our EOC. Council, it plays a really important part in this as well, in that their role is to communicate the city's message out to the constituents. Again, they're supposed to be the liaison along with the community, but it is imperative that the same message gets shared. Especially in an emergency, miscommunication can end up really, really derailing everything. And then council also typically volunteers when able. Okay, so how to stay informed. There's the city website. We'll put things out if there's emergencies. We'll also have things out on social media pages if we can. Biggest thing that you should sign up for is the Linn Benton Alert countywide. And we have links on our web page, I believe, as well as social media. So if you haven't done that, especially with all the wildfires and things that are going on, please go ahead and sign up for that. That is where you're going to get your messaging. And then also local media reports. But your most important piece is the Lynn Benton alert, because that covers the entire county. So we do have the 3 warming cooling shelters, police station, library, and then, as I mentioned, in City Hall. But then we also have Jim Riggs is the emergency shelter for larger events. And we have now the supplies from the trailer that include cots and blankets and everything along those lines. So we now are ready to be able to house people should we need to in the case of an evacuation. A generator is going to be installed this fall. In fact, Eric just brought the generator, like it's in our parking lot right now, right? Okay, it's now at Public Works, which is very, very cool. And then we just applied for a grant too, so that we'll be getting a backup generator here at City Hall, as well as our water treatment plant. So, in case of an emergency, the county typically manages the incident. Our role as the city is to manage a local evacuation shelter if necessary, keep city operations going, support other agencies, and keep the area as clear as we can. One of the things that we really need are volunteers that can help with emergency management, primarily for managing donations, helping to direct other volunteers, making sure that we have some of the correct supplies, and helping to communicate the word out to the rest of the community. So we have some things. There's a pamphlet about wildfire prevention. This is a scary time. This is fire season. So please take some of those pamphlets, and please, if you do own property, take a look at what things you can do as far as keeping your weeds down and making sure that trees aren't going to be falling on other houses or on power lines, etc. And then if you are interested in helping us with emergency management, volunteer. But when a disaster is going on, while we do need volunteers at that point, it's so much more helpful to have volunteers already keyed in and ready to go in the case of a disaster. Having to try to manage that all at the same time that a disaster is going on is really challenging, because we're already going to have our hands full. And then again, know what exactly you're going to be doing in a disaster and keeping to your role. Even if you feel like what you can do is really helpful, often it can derail the process that's in place. And so unless asked, staying in your role. Okay, so other things that you can do as a volunteer that we would really need in emergencies is checking on your neighbors, helping out at shelters, doing a phone tree. When we had the freeze, we opened up Jim Riggs, but we weren't able to get the word out. Being able to have additional volunteers that can help get the word out to those who might need a shelter is really important. And then, of course, helping us with donations as well. Okay, so I'm done, which everyone's probably relieved about. Any questions for me? Yes. Oh, watch duty. Watch Duty is a fantastic app, and if you don't have it on your phone, I highly recommend it. I live by it, so it's a great thing. Yes. Yes. Hmm. So absolutely. Actually, a lot of the people who talk at council don't live in city limits. I think being involved is very helpful. There's also opportunities to serve on different committees and volunteer opportunities as well. And we'll be talking some more about some communication pieces, but being able to just be involved in this whole area is important. Okay, I'm handing it over, and I'm sorry I took so long, but all the rest of you can talk really fast.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. I am Adam Leesinger. I am the special projects manager. That's the first time I've actually said that out loud. Before that, I was the communications manager for the city of Sweet Home. So we're going to go over some communication stuff, and some tax stuff, and I can't remember what else we have on here. So what do we do? So when we're communicating emergencies, projects that we're working on, parks, um, street paving, trying to let people know what's going on before it happens. City events, we have Harvest Festival coming up. We had Park and Tree Committee did Arbor Day event, so we'll advertise that kind of stuff. And then fun stuff. We will advertise for other groups if we get advance notice when we can. Next. Next, please. So some of the ways that we use to communicate is our website, sweethomeor.gov. That is run by us. We also have our official Facebook page, which is City Government of Sweet Home, Oregon. There is a flyer in the back of the room that has QR codes that go straight to our website and also our Facebook page. The police department and library have their own official pages. We use the electronic sign out front. Some of you pulling in may have noticed that we had Citizens Academy tonight on there. Flyers, handouts, door hangers. That is used more by our public works department and our water people than we do for advertising events. Local newspaper. Sarah was here earlier. Shayla shows up sometimes. They typically reach out to us. If we use them, we have to pay. Getting an advertisement in the newspaper is expensive. So if they come in and report on a committee meeting, on a council meeting, that's on them. We don't reach out to them for that, but they do have access to our agenda and stuff ahead of time. So again, there's the QR codes to our social media and also our website. That's in the back. So some appropriate ways to communicate with the city on social media. So if you see a broken water main or an overflowing trash can, do not put a comment on Facebook, especially in a community group. We do not monitor those. We do not admin on those. We actually can't comment on those. So there's something in the in the settings of Facebook, depending on how that community group is set up, we do not even have an option to comment. So even if you tag us, we can't comment. There is no comment button. So this number is 24/7. So if you see a dirty needle on the playground and you leave a Facebook comment in a community group, we will have probably no idea that happened. If you call this number, we can respond to that immediately. Yep, it is the PD non-emergency number, and they will dispatch to Public Works. So how do we find out about agendas, city council, committee, and other meetings? There's actually two ways. Down at the bottom, there's a link that says agendas and minutes. Up at the top, there's 4 drop downs on our website. In that one, it says departments. Over on the left, agendas and minutes. So there's actually 2 ways on that page. Next. So how do I watch previously held public meetings? All of our council meetings, most of our committees are recorded. So again, on our website, the 4 tabs, the far right-hand side, how do I, brings you a drop down. Our YouTube channel is right there. All of our recorded meetings are on the YouTube channel. Oh, just bring the mouse up onto these and then click it anywhere. Yeah, just click and then right arrow. So, so another common thing that we hear, we'll have people call us to pay for their power bill. We'll have people call us to pay for gas. They'll call us to make changes to their garbage service. So what is a department of the city? We have administration, finance, KED, public works, water, wastewater, library, police, and courts. What is not a department? The fire district. People think that the fire district is a fire department. It is not. They're their own standalone entity. The school district, Pacific Power, Sweet Home Sanitation, Lynn County Parks, the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of State Lands, Northwest Natural Gas, ODOT, all not parts of us. My favorite slide. So this is my favorite because I had no idea of any of this when I started here. So the Lynn County Tax Assessor's Office is actually the one who determines property tax amounts for the homeowners. The city cannot influence that. The city has no authority. So of all of the property taxes, Kelsey touched on this, in Lynn County that are collected, the city receives 0.379%. That is correct. Less than half of 1% is what the city gets. So that averages out to $73 per tax-paying resident. That includes Safeway, Bi-Mart, Murphy, all of the large paying people. From an average citizen, that number is like $49 is what we get. The $4,500 that you pay to Lynn County, average, we get $73. So the exception, oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So if you do not live inside of city limits, and we do have a city limits map in another slide or two, we do not get any of your property tax money. Bonds and levies are excluded. So bonds and levies, as Kelsey touched on, the library and city are funded by bonds and levies. They're only voted on by registered voters inside of city limits. All of the money received from these bonds and levies will be used in a way spelled out specifically in the budget. The fire district and school are voted on by registers inside of their district, not city limits. So they have their own district boundaries. Because they're not departments of the city, we don't get any of that money. There's the city limits map. It's pretty much the river. Runs down to just past Pleasant Valley. Over on this side, Lake Point is the furthest east, I believe. Yep, the point. Questions? Yes, sir. It does. So Kelsey touched on that. When that rate was established, Sweet Home looked a lot different than it does today. There is nothing we can do.
If I can just add that that's a statewide issue. So it's not even just that like Sweet Home isn't able to go and get that changed. That is something that would have to be changed fully by the state. And it's something that's a challenge for multiple cities. So the League of Oregon Cities does advocate for that to be changed. However, one of the challenges there is that Oregon is almost split into two different worlds. We've got our larger cities, and then we've got our rural communities and our rural cities. And this is a much bigger challenge for our rural cities. So, and the League of Oregon Cities, while they do state that they are concerned about the rural cities, they tend to be more involved with the large cities. Yes. Hey, this is fun. You guys are enjoying this, aren't you? All right. Okay, Jen, and then we'll go over there. Yes. No, you touched on exactly the challenge. You are 100% correct. And we are required to do more because we're over 10,000. And we do get some additional funding. We get that when it comes to ratepayers and that small increase in property tax. We get another 100 houses, we get another $730. But
it's still 0.79.
yes, until it changes on a state level. My mouth was off. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So that is paid for by the state. That is ODOT. And that is also where it gets a little bit tricky because we do not have jurisdiction over. No, 228 is ODOT. Yeah. So they are the ones who do the improvements there. We may make some requests. One of the things that I'll touch on later is Pleasant Valley, for example, and that intersection. They are the ones who are in charge of that. And the other challenge is that ODOT, and this is partially having to do with some of the gas tax and some other things, but they are in a multi-$100 million deficit right now. So them coming in to do different improvements, it's really challenging to get that as well. Okay, so potentially they can approve it. And that's actually, I'll touch on that right now because it's a question and I'll skip that slide in a little bit. But one of the things I've been working on is we submitted a grant request for the design of Pleasant Valley intersection, as well as a design for all of the 20 and looking at the 228 to develop a safe corridor. And we've been working with other cities in the state on that too, Albany and Lebanon. And that is a federal grant. If we receive that funding, then they can design a safer corridor throughout the 20 coming through town. But then we would need to get another grant in order to actually do the construction. And trying to do an intersection or a roundabout or a light is a couple $1 million. So this would need to be a larger grant. When we talked about relationships, one of the reasons why having relationships with other cities and with the county and with other things is so important is when we do a grant request like this, where we are partnering with these other cities, we need to make sure that we have those positive relationships so that we can do that and hopefully get additional funding. Absolutely.
Good. Next. Quiz time. So what are 2 ways that the city uses to communicate? Anybody just yell it out. 1, 2. What are at least 3 city departments? On average. You're fired. On average, how much money does the city receive per resident from property taxes? What's the best city in Oregon?
Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you everyone for being here tonight. We're very excited to have you. My name is Cecily Pretty. I'm the Administrative Services Director for the city. Should I speak a little closer? Is that better? Okay, so I get asked a lot, what are administrative services? What do you do? Well, this question is answered a little bit differently in every city that has this role. But right now, for me, it includes city recorder duties, HR, risk management, utility billing, municipal court, and as staff and small organizations like to joke, other duties as assigned. So I also like to joke that I am the city recorder non officio. So by charter, technically, Kelsey, the city manager, is the city recorder, but I have a strong background in that and I love to do it. So I do all of our agendas, our minutes. I also assist with our archival. We have elections coming up and I do the board and committee management. I am really passionate about preservation of information, and especially in a place like Sweet Home that has such a rich history. I have really enjoyed going through old meeting minutes and packets to learn more about this community. As I have time, I'm trying to add more and more to our website so that's accessible to everyone. But I have a lot of other stuff going on. So if you're looking for something and you don't see it, please, please ask us. We want to make information available as we can. Just a little bit of a note on that. As Kelsey said, we are stretched thin, so things can take time. We're also not required by law to produce new documents. So if you want us to write a report that's never been written, if we have the time, maybe we can do it, but typically we can't. And also just keep in mind, there is certain information that's protected under state law that we can't release. So I'm going to reiterate some of what Kelsey said. Who's responsible for the direction the city takes? Pop quiz. City council, that's right. So what is a policy? A course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or individual. So council sets those policies here. So if you're wanting to see the city take a different direction, council is the best way to engage. And there are multiple ways that you can influence that policy direction. Again, Kelsey talked about boards and committees, council engagement. We also love to have you come to city events and interact with folks. And also, again, we have elections coming up this year, so you can run for city council. So this is the list of some of our boards and committees. We have information about all of these on our website. A lot of them do have residency requirements, but some of them do not. Some of them are open to folks outside of city limits, and we do currently have some vacancies. So you can reach out to me for more information on that. At every city council meeting, we also have a public comment portion. Anyone from anywhere can sign up to speak on any topic. But just keep in mind, it's not a Q&A session. It's not a conversation. It's your chance to be heard, but there's not a response portion. If you want to have a conversation with your council members, it's best to reach out to them individually, set up an appointment, attend events, things like that. So if you want to engage before public comment, there are a couple different ways. You can attend city committees, which again are typically comprised of citizen members. So they're your peers, they're your neighbors. You can talk to them because they'll make policy recommendations. We also have our agendas on the website. I recommend that you look for those. It'll talk about everything that council is going to be considering at their next meeting, so you can see what's going on. And we typically try to post those 3 to 5 days in advance. And again, you are free to engage with your council members at any time. They are your elected representatives. So these are some of our regular committee and council meeting schedules. I'm not going to read all of those, but basically these are the times that you can typically engage. It does fluctuate from time to time, which is why it's really important to check that agenda website. And again, Adam showed the 2 ways. I like the one right in the middle on the homepage. And then you can also sign up to be notified whenever a meeting is created and scheduled. So again, if you go to the top for how do I, you can go to email subscriptions. If you check the box for meeting notices and put in your email, you will get notified anytime council or committees are meeting, and that will include an agenda packet as well. So here is contact info for your city councilors. Again, this is all on the website, so I'm not going to read over that, and we will send these slides out. And again, it's an exciting year. We have elections coming up this fall. So filing actually opens on Sunday, which we are closed, so Monday, and it will close September 6th. And the requirements here is you must be registered to vote, and you must have lived within Sweet Home city limits for a year prior to your date of filing. And I do have candidate packets in the back that has a lot more information, and also the affidavit that you have to sign about your residency. And that's my portion. So any questions? Sweet. Oh, I was gonna do that after P do it. That's fine. I can touch on it now. Yeah. It's pretty. Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm just gonna do a quick slide on community court. Like I said, municipal courts is kind of under my umbrella, but I really love community court here. I think it's a really cool concept. Basically, it's a pretty massive partnership, and it really focuses on restitution for people who really want to turn things around for themselves. It is an opportunity for folks with low-level offenses to get connected with services and just try to improve their situations and not reoffend. And so I love this program. I think it's really community focused, and I think a lot of people aren't aware that we even have this as an option for some people. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted it. And thank you, Ryan, for letting me know we currently have 8 folks and we just had someone graduate. So, all right, perfect.
Well, I want to thank you also for coming here this evening. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the PD and kind of give a high-level overview of what we do there. My name is Jason. I'm the chief of police, and I have been in law enforcement now. This October will be 27 years. And as far as my job goes right now, I absolutely love it. It's been the best job I've ever had. So we already touched on this, but the PD is levy funded. So all of you out there who support us, we are so thankful for that. And with that, if we don't get the levy and if it's not voted for with a yes, and we don't have funding at all, so we won't have a PD. So our current levy is due to expire in June of 2026, which means a year from this November, we will go out for that. So we only ask for what we need. So we recognize that we are, we want to be good stewards of the community's money. And so we're only going to ask for what we need. So next. This is our overview of the folks that work at the PD. You can see that I'm there at the top, the chief, so I just oversee everything. Captain Ryan Cummings, he makes sure that everything is running smoothly, and then you can see here we've got all of our employees. So we have a detective who is an SRO, Tyler Robinson. He's our school resource officer. Also will fill in as a detective as needed. Sean Potter is our full-time detective right now. Traffic enforcement, we now have a full-time traffic enforcement officer, and he is going to be starting on August 5th or 6th, I think it is. We have 2 patrol sergeants. We have Jeff Hamlin and David Hickox, and then we have the folks on both of their teams. And I put Trevor Sundquist and Brian Prather there in the pink. I highlighted them because Trevor is currently assigned to our Lynn County Regional SWAT team. He just made that just recently. So anytime that SWAT has a call out, he will get a phone call and respond to those SWAT call outs. And then Brian Prather is our canine officer. So anytime that we need a dog on a call, he will get called out, and other agencies utilize us for our canine. We also have our communications commander, Penny Leland. She oversees our dispatch, and then Sean Morgan, who does our evidence, and then a lot of our homeless outreach. So next. One of the things that I really want people to know is that we are a full service agency. So we will respond to every single call that comes in. It doesn't matter what it is, we will respond to those calls. We try to make in-person contact. Sometimes there are those of you who don't want an officer to come to your house. We won't respond if you don't want us to come there, but we will talk to you on the phone. Everything that we do at the PD is really data driven. So we want to solve the problems in this community using data. So we have crime stats and we have officer stats to see exactly what's going on. It really gives us an accurate picture, I think, of the issues that we're dealing with, and then we come up with ideas to try to solve those problems. The stats that we have, oftentimes you will see at our council meetings in the agenda packets for each month. You can see those stats that the PD does. One of the things that I really want you to know is that all of our officers, all of our staff, we are compassionate there. Really, my philosophy as far as leadership and serving all of you is how can we be for you? I mean, really, that's what we do at the PD is we want to solve problems. We want to interact with you in a way that really communicates that we are for you. And I hope that we do that well. A little bit on our training. So for those of you who don't know, training and hiring take up a lot of time and a lot of our budget. So from hire date to when an officer actually goes on solo patrol, it's like 10 months, maybe even closer to a year. Our officers that get hired brand new, they have to go through a 16-week academy up in Salem at the Oregon Police Academy. And so it's pretty extensive. And then on top of that, when they come back, there is an additional, I think, about 17 weeks of just in-house training. So it's not like they go to the academy and then come back and they're on their own. No, they have to actually come back. They get assigned to a field training officer where they get coached on how to do the job specifically for our community. PD 101, crimes and violations. So we handle everything that gets called in. So if you have a traffic complaint, we'll respond to traffic complaints. If there's a crime that's going to be reported, obviously we respond to those. We do drug investigations, although that is kind of been on the back burner for the last couple of years with essentially the legalization of drugs. But nonetheless, there are still people out there dealing drugs, and we still will investigate those crimes. We respond to a lot of disturbances, to a lot of welfare checks, a lot of mental health related calls. So whatever you call in, we're going to respond and handle accordingly. Courts, one of the things that I would want you to know about our court process is that when we handle a call and it goes to the courts, it's going to take some time. The legal process, the court process is not a fast process at all. There are some of our cases, if they are misdemeanors, they're going to go for the most part to our city attorney in municipal court to handle. Any of our felony cases are going to go over to the Lynn County District Attorney over in Albany. And then, yeah, some of our cases, they just get bogged down in the court system. They get delayed for various reasons. I mean, there are times that we will handle a call and we might make an arrest, but we won't go to court for, 8, 9, 10 months later. So it's a slow process. Another thing that is important to remember, or I would like you to know, is the difference between a civil case and a criminal case. And a lot of people get frustrated with this. Criminal cases are obvious, right? They're criminal calls. But there are so many calls that we handle where somebody will call in and say, hey, the person that has been living at our house for the last 9 months, they're, causing problems and we want them out of there and we want you to do something about it. And we really can't do anything about those types of calls because they're civil, right? So those are like landlord-tenant issues. The most that we can do with these civil calls is we want to respond and we want to mediate those situations and refer people to the appropriate resources. So if you call and we tell you that it's a civil call, we understand that it is really frustrating, but we're really limited on what we can do for civil cases. Next. Mental health calls. So a lot of our calls that we handle are mental health related. I guess it's a combination, mental health with drugs and alcohol, and that really probably takes up a lot of the calls for service that we have. Fortunately, Sean Morgan, our community service officer, he has been such a great person for our agency because we have him connected with our FAC facility, our low barrier shelter, and he works closely with a lot of people and engages with a lot of people that have resources. So I can tell you it is so much better now than what it has been in the past because we are actually able to get people connected to resources in ways now that we've never been able to in the past. And so that's been Really, really helpful. Adam touched on this in communications, social media. What you see on social media, don't always believe what you see on there. The common thing that I think I see in community groups is that the police department doesn't do anything. They never do anything. They never do anything. And that's absolutely not true. So just be mindful of what you see on there, because we really try to make a difference in this community, and we always respond to calls, and we always try to communicate with people about what we're doing so that you're not left in the dark. Another thing that I would like to mention is Property Watch. So if you own a business, or you know somebody in the community that owns a business, we have Property Watch, and any business can sign up with our Property Watch. It's just basically a form that you fill out with some basic information, and it gives our officers permission to contact people on that property after hours. So if your business is closed and we have our night shift folks out and about, and we see somebody suspicious on that property, and you are on our Property Watch, it just gives us the authority to say, hey, what are you doing here? And if you don't have any, business or reason to be on here, you need to move on, and you are trespassed from the property. So get the word out. If you know anyone that has a business or a property in town, we would love to have you sign up for our Property Watch. All you have to do is contact the PD, and we can get that form to you. Dispatch, just a brief overview. Our dispatch works a combination of 8 and 12-hour shifts. They answer all of our non-emergency calls for service. All of the 911 calls come in, they actually go through the Lynn County Dispatch Center first, and then they transfer those to us if they are calls within the city limits. They dispatch our officers to all of our calls, and they are usually the ones, if you come into the PD and want to talk to an officer or have a question, they are usually the first faces that you see when you come into the police department. They do other things. They enter warrants. So if the court issues a warrant for somebody's arrest, they will enter that into our law enforcement data system, among other things. So patrol. Overview of patrol. We have basically 2 different teams of patrol, 2 teams with 4 officers on each of those teams, and each of those teams have a sergeant that oversees them. So a team consists of 2 officers that work a 12-hour day shift, so 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., as well as a 12-hour night shift, which is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So yeah, their schedules are, one team is, let's see, the best way to describe it would be officers have a long week and a short week. So on the first week that they're working, their long week, the only days off they have are Wednesday and Thursday. But on the flip side, the following week, the only days they have to work are Wednesday and Thursday. So it's a pretty long shift, but it's pretty nice because they get some time off. And I already covered the academy stuff. So day in the life of a patrol officer. So they come on duty. The first thing that they're going to do is get their patrol cars ready. They're going to come inside. They're going to brief for the calls of service that happened in the prior shift, or actually our officers, if they've been off for a couple days, they will take a look at the calls for service that have happened over the last few days, just so that they can get caught up and know exactly what's been going on, because sometimes all of you will call in and have questions, and that officer might be on their day off. Well, we want the people who are working to understand and have an idea of what's been going on in the community as far as calls for service go. So they brief and are prepared for that. Yeah, they'll go out and handle calls for service. A big portion of our officers' time is writing reports. So, everything that they do, if you call in and file a criminal police report, that's going to get documented. And it is time consuming because we want the reports to be accurate and to be ready for court later on. So, all of these reports that are criminal related, they're going to go to the city attorney or district attorneys, and they're going to review those reports, and then those are going to go out to various places. So we want those to be accurate, so it takes time to write those. Traffic enforcement. So you'll see our officers out there enforcing traffic violations and educating the public with traffic enforcement if they're not handling other calls for service. Another thing that our officers do and are busy with is court. So they will get subpoenaed for either traffic violation cases or criminal cases. Some of those cases that they're going to get subpoenaed for are going to be over in Albany at the Lynn County DA's office for the circuit court over there, as well as our municipal court here in town. So next. Yes. AI recording. We have not. So we used to have somebody that would come in and we would record those and they would type them out for us, but no, I'm going to have to look into that. So. Okay, I'll have to connect with you about what you guys use. So. Life of a ticket. So a lot of people have questions about, what happens when I get a citation? What is the life cycle of a ticket? And Ryan, you'll have to correct me if I'm off on any of this since you deal with this, but a citation will get issued, right? So maybe you were speeding and you get a traffic citation for that. So the citation will go to the municipal court and it gets entered into their system. When you get a citation, though, you do have some options, right? You look on the back of the citation and you can read through those options. You can go to court and plead not guilty and request a trial, right? Or you can go to court and plead guilty or no contest. That's another option. You can skip court altogether for traffic violations, but there are some consequences to that. I've been told by our staff over there that if you decide to not go to court and skip it altogether, you will be guilty by default. The conviction is sent to DMV. You will have to pay the maximum amount for the fine, which can be kind of hefty at times, depending on what it is you were cited for. And then you have to pay that within 60 days. And if you don't, it goes to collections. Or I did not know about this option here until a few months ago when I was talking to Carol over at our courts. She said you can skip court altogether and see the municipal court staff regarding violation. And I didn't know that staff actually has the authority to provide options that are similar to what a judge would provide. So that was new information to me. And I've been told that it is particularly helpful for first-time offenders who want to keep their driving record clean. So there you go. That's the life of a ticket. So as far as the money goes, the money does not go to the PD. So this is how the money is dispersed. So when you pay your traffic fine, $50 of it goes to the state. $16 of it goes to the county, and then the remaining goes into the general fund here. So we're not out there trying to get our quota because we don't make anything off of traffic citations. Not the PD, no. So yeah, we're not out there making money. I know you're just joking. Just real briefly here, Sean Morgan is our CSO. His day in the life of his job is he does our evidence, oversees our volunteers, will oversee things like Shop with a Cop, our safety fair. He's our homeless liaison, so he works very closely with our homeless folks here in town, trying to connect them with resources. Neighborhood Watch, he's involved with Peer Court. He is a Swiss Army knife, and I absolutely love him. He does a lot in this community. Next. And that's about it. Want to volunteer. We would love to have you volunteer. You would be working closely with Sean Morgan, who's a great coordinator. It is absolutely fun to volunteer with the PD. A lot of the things that our volunteers do, they gather speed data, help with peer court. We always love having volunteers for Shop with a Cop in December. It's always a lot of fun. We have our big safety fair in June. We had it this year over at Sankey Park, which is always a huge success. Child Abuse Awareness Month. And if you want to volunteer, the commitment, it's really as much as you want to make it. It is not much at all. It's not heavy and it's very manageable. You get to know the people that work at the PD, and really it gives you an opportunity to, form relationships with us, which we love, and to get to know you better, and for you to get to know us better. So please, if you are interested in volunteering, reach out to Sean Morgan at the PD. We would love to have you with us. We love our volunteers. So I think that's it. Any questions? Yes, correct. Yeah, so we don't know how that is going to affect our community, but I think what it will do is, so we have a detective, right? So yes, so the House bill, or what was it, Senate bill? I can't remember the name of it, the number, but several years ago that went into effect that essentially legalized drugs. The Oregon legislature finally made a determination here recently that that was not working. And the result of essentially legalizing drugs here over the last few years, I mean, we've seen our ODs, people ODing on fentanyl rise. We've seen a lot more people die of overdoses, and it's just been really, really sad. It's just been horrible for this state and really horrible for this community. So I don't know all of the specifics and all of the details yet, but that it gives law enforcement and other people some, I guess the best way to describe it, some teeth for enforcing some of our drug laws now. So they're bringing some of these things back, and it's going to be able to help us get people, the help that they need, I think. So, yeah, it's going to help us, with our drug investigations, for sure. And we're going to be able to hopefully get people, into the resources that they need, which, wasn't working before. So, yeah. Yes. What's that? Yes. Yes. For, for enforcement, it can be 1 mile and over, 1 mile per hour over. We do enforce that. Correct. Yes. So yeah, I mean, that's up to officer discretion, right? So there are, there's always context for the traffic stop, right? And so we don't tell people that you have to issue citations at a certain speed, right? All of that goes into the context of the traffic of the traffic stop. So yes, we do. We will enforce that now even more with a traffic officer. So we're excited about that. So if people call us with specific traffic concerns and complaints, we have somebody now that we can assign to certain areas and really enforce those areas that are, maybe have been neglected or have been problems. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? The drag racers on 22nd and Long. If it's a problem, call it. Yes, we will deal with it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, 22nd Long. Okay, duly noted. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that, nah, well, I don't, not, no. If we are dealing with a civil situation, it is still going to be a civil situation. So, well, if they're committing crimes, they can be arrested and they could go to jail for that. But if they're living there, we can't force them to, we can't tell them, right. Right. Now, what somebody can do is if they're in a situation like that, maybe it's appropriate to get some sort of a restraining order, right? And so that way you have a court order that says you can't go back to that location. So, yeah. Any other questions? No. All right. I'm going to hand it off then.
I'm Megan Daisy. I'm the library director. I'm going to keep this as short as possible. Not that we don't mean anything, but okay. First thing about the library is where we are. A lot of people in this town, especially high schoolers, do not know where we are, which is fun because we're a block from the high school. So we're on the corner of 13th and Kalmaya. We've been there since 1969. Prior to that, we were just across the street. Where does our money come from? We've talked a lot about our levy already. We get approximately $507,000 every year from the levy. This is for all of our funding. If you look at our city budget, it will show a lot more than that. That is because of a donation that we have that is not for operations. So go back one. We also get a lot of funding from the Friends of the Library. They cover all of our programs, activities, and sometimes collections. They are giving us approximately $10,000 a year. Their store brings in about double that. Half of that they have to pay for rent and other things that happen at the store. And then what's left is what we get. And they put a lot into savings as well. We get about $70,000 worth of grants last year. This covers another wide variety of things. A lot of these grants have very particular things that they go to and can't go towards other things. Like we got a grant from the state library that was just for a person to help with digital equity, which is helping people to learn more about how to do stuff online, learn more about computers and free computer help. That was all she could help us with, even though she was in the building. She couldn't check out books or anything like that. She was just dedicated to that one program. Donations. We love donations. We materials for programs, books, DVDs. If we don't add the book or DVD or anything else donated, it goes to the Friends of the Library for them to sell. Now you can go to the next slide. We are 5,750 square feet, built in 1969, which is the year after one of our council members graduated from high school. I just know this because my mother was in his graduating class. We have just under 30,000 items in our building. We need a lot more space, and I'll get to that a little bit later. The average around the state is to have about 0.86 square foot per person that lives in the community. We are at 0.57 square feet per person. We have just 4.7 full-time employees, which is actually 8 people. There's only one person that is full-time, and that is me. We do have shared positions with other departments and also with the school district. Volunteers, we love our volunteers. That almost equals another full-time person. Over 670 hours volunteered last year. We're open 34 hours a week, but we also have programs before and after our normal open hours. How do you get a library card? If you live in the city of Sweet Home, you can get a library card for free. Every kid that is enrolled in the Sweet Home School District can also get a library card with us. If they live outside of city limits, there will be some limits to it. You can also pay a $35 yearly fee if you live outside of city limits to get a library card with us. That is the cheapest in Linn County. And that also gives you access to other libraries in the county as well. We have just under 3,000 active library cards, and every year you come in and renew it. That's what means it's active, is you've used it in the last year. Last year we added over 600 brand new cards. We're already at about that this year as well. We have a lot of things. We shove them in every corner possible at the library. Like literally, I'm trying to figure out how I have a 2 square foot space that I want to build another shelf for to get even more books. We've added a TV that we do gaming and movies on. We have a lot of TV series now, nonfiction DVDs. We have musical instruments, board games, puzzles, and tons of books. This is almost all the libraries in Linn County share stuff amongst each other. We share our online catalog system. You can check out books from the other libraries. We have a courier that comes twice a week, delivering books from Albany, Lebanon, Harrisburg, SCIO. Sharing all of these books saves the different libraries between $1,000 and $10,000 every month, because we don't have to buy every book out there. We can just borrow it from somewhere else. We do a lot of things. I think my favorite one is the bottom is we create friendships. That's how people get to know each other. We are the third space in this town. We are there for whatever is needed. We love having local authors come and talk to us and sell their books. We like having everything we do. Summer reading is our busy time of the year. We did lots of activities out in the park. Love to do some more inside. We just don't have the space for 100 kids to be in the library at the same time. Why we do what we do is we're really here to serve the needs of the community. That's why we're here, is we're funded by the community. We are here for the community. This doesn't mean that everybody's going to like every single thing we have, but we do have something for everybody. We have a ton of partnerships. This was just all the logos I could find in like 10 minutes. I will say yes to almost every partnership that comes along if it's something that is library related. They can give us money, or Ridgeway Health has given us fossils. They've also done some programs with us. We will do whatever we need to do. What we really need is a new building. That is what you're seeing some of in our budget that says we're over 100 million. A lot of that is slated to go towards property acquisition for a new building. That was a donation for a couple years ago. We need to have more space to do more things. Just today, we got a request for somebody wanting to do their DMV test at the library. I'm still waiting for it. We have a grant that we're getting cameras for our computers so that people can do stuff like that. But people want to come in, they want to have their doctor's appointments online. They want to have their family visits. We just need more space for all of this to happen. Some of the pictures you're seeing here are some of the repair work that would need to happen on the building. And we are doing the best we can. This building was built to last 20 years, and it's been much longer than that. What's coming up this summer, just for our summer reading program, we started out with 56 programs. We've added more along the way. This is a list of what we were planning a month ago. We've added probably 10 more programs since then. Something for everybody is what we're trying to do. Volunteer. We love volunteers. They will do everything for us. We actually work with the community court, and they help us with some of the landscaping as part of the teenagers' duties of restitution is helping landscaping. They will help us process books. We have other volunteers as well. Friends of the Library are volunteers with us. We don't count them in our volunteer hours. If we did, we'd have 10,000 more hours. My only question in my quiz that I was supposed to create is, do you have a library card? If you do not, I can get you one today. And even then, you can come to the library and we can get you one any day that we're open. And then finally, this is from the New York Public Library. Question they used to keep every question that was asked. Is this the place where I can go to ask questions then get answers? Something like that. I can't quite read it. But that's from 1947, and that's really what a library is we're here to answer your questions and to get you information. So that's all I have. If anyone have any questions for me. Okay, thank you. Now you get to be educated by Blair. That'll be fun.
Hello.
Thank you for your patience. This is a long meeting, and I will try not to add to any boredom if you might be experiencing any. But my name is Blair Larson. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director. That is a long and cumbersome title, and that's why we shorten our department to KED, because nobody wants to say Community and Economic Development all the time. Yes. Well, yeah, well, but then said, yeah, it won't work. Anyway, so KED is planning, building, and economic development. Here's a little comic here. This is Calvin Hobbes, my favorite. Calvin says, this town just ain't big enough for the both of us. Hobbes says, yep, I reckon we'll have to annex part of the county. And then Calvin says, Mom won't let us play with guns. And Hobbes is excited to be on the zoning board. So planning is fun, but it's not for everyone. It's for nerds like me, I suppose. But I am happy to talk with you about any of this. And I'm going to speed through a bunch of this. So if you want to know more or have questions some of this, you have to go in a bit of depth. I am happy to meet, talk, give me a call, email, whatever, to help shed more light on this. But essentially what planning is how the city determines what uses of land can be where and how intense they can be. So, for example, this helps the city to be more livable by ensuring that incompatible things aren't right next to each other. It's one of the things that keeps a 24-hour manufacturing plant from being built right next to your home, because some things just don't belong next to each other. Planning also helps preserve or change the character of neighborhoods and commercial areas. A lot of cities do that with various standards and rules that they put in place. With planning, the city has to play the long game. A lot of times we have folks who will complain and say, well, you're making me do this, but there's no sidewalk on that street. Well, not yet. We have to think 20 years ahead with the requirements that we put in, because the things that people build, they last at least 20 years, if not longer. And so we have to kind of look to the future of what that's going to be. If you or anyone else wants to develop or change their property, you definitely can. One thing that we recommend is to talk to us as soon as possible, because we don't want you to have any unpleasant surprises. A lot of times someone will plan out their whole project and even purchase materials or buy the land and then find that there is something that keeps them from doing exactly what they want to do. In most cases, yes, you can still do it. It's just a question of how. There may be some little tweaks that we have to make, but we want to talk with you before we get to that point, because once you put money down, then emotions get really high. Citizens can get involved by participating in planning commission meetings and commenting on applications or proposed laws, and by seeking appointment to the planning commission. We right now have a vacancy on the planning commission, and so if you live within city limits, please apply. We would love to have you. There are a couple seats on the planning commission that are outside city limits, but within the school district boundaries. Those are currently filled and not available right now, but there's a possibility for that in the future. There was one, can you go back? There was one more thing I was going to mention. Yes. So applications. Anytime somebody applies for planning permission to do anything, we are required by law to send out notices to everyone within a certain radius. But even if you don't get that notice, you're still allowed to come into a meeting and comment on that application. As was mentioned on the communications presentation, you can sign up for email subscriptions and stuff like that. You can be emailed every time there is an application that goes before the planning commission, so that you can look at it and see what's going on. Everyone's allowed to be involved that way. And especially when we have things that people want to see built in town, there's a lot of folks who want more housing. We'd love to have your comments on that, because too often all we get are, I don't want that. If there's something you do want, we'd love to hear that too, but we'll hear the I don't want that too. What, sir? Yeah. Yeah. So that particular action was not a planning decision. That had to do with the street right of way, which I'll cover in a minute. But Subway, I did talk with Subway actually about that, and we talked about that street and how it affects them. Sure. Yeah, that block is one way now. But what I'm saying is that's not a planning application. That's not from someone developing their property. That was an action that the city took in managing its right of way. Sure. Sure. So I guess I'll digress a little bit from here and cover that street. So the city right of way is governed by the city. That's the city is charged with making sure that that is used for city purposes, for making sure people have access to their infrastructure, making sure that transportation can get through, making sure that there's parking and so forth. A few years ago, we went through a process with the city to look at our downtown streetscape, at everything within the right of way. And one of the things that came out of that process was that a lot of people wanted to see more parking in the downtown so that there were more options for getting around to different stores. And at that time in that plan, that section of roadway was slated to be changed to one way, and that would allow for more angled parking to be put in, which brings in more parking to the area. Later, there was a grant that the city obtained for an EV charging station that was fully grant funded, and one of the feasible locations for that was on that street. And so it was an extra amenity that could be added because, like we talked about, Sweet Home has a lot of people passing through town, and we want to capture as much of that for our downtown as possible. And so the location for that charging station was chosen to be put in a city right of way, which is property that the city controls, with the intent that it would be an amenity for people who are passing through to be able to stop and charge. And while they're charging, they can visit Subway, they can visit other shops, and add to the vitality of our downtown. Now, certainly we have a lot of vacant spaces, and we have a lot of growing to do in our downtown to utilize those parking areas. But like I said, we're thinking ahead. We're looking at the long game, looking 20 years ahead. Do we have those spaces that businesses are going to want? And I'll get into economic development more, but that's a bit on that. Back to planning. So that's planning. Building is a different process. Building is, if you're building something, state law there's a state building code that says things have to be built in a certain way and inspected when you build something. So that's also my department. Little comic here, the 3 little pigs are getting kicked out of their homes by the wolf. And it turns out the reason why is because straw and sticks are just not safe construction materials. We're really about making sure that buildings are properly erected and that they're safe. Next slide, please. So all building activity is governed by the state building code. The city has a building permit technician, and we have a contracted building inspector that guide applicants through the process of building and approving their project. While we don't have the ability to change state building code, we can advocate for changes, and we are permitted to add local regulations. We typically don't do that because the desire is to not add anything more to the burden of building a property. And then, as I mentioned, the building permit process is not intended to keep anybody from building on their property. It's mainly just going to change how things are built, because there are requirements of, what wind load, for example, your house should have to meet, what snow load should it be required to meet, and so forth. So how does stuff get built? In a perfect world, this is how it works. A resident, business, or property owner decides that they want to build something. They meet with city staff to verify what permits they need and learn more about the process. The applicants then fill out the required applications. This may include land surveys, site plans, or architectural drawings. The city staff review the permits for completeness, take payment, and issue the permit, and then the applicant completes the work, and the city conducts the final inspections. So what requires a permit? We do have a fence permit that is $20. That's mainly just to make sure that you're not putting a fence on somebody else's property. Some home repairs and remodeling can be done without a permit. If you're working on your own home, chances are you probably can do it just fine. But if you're putting in something bigger, something that requires taking a wall down or major plumbing, you're going to need a permit probably for that. Residential work by a contractor typically requires a permit. And then work on commercial and industrial areas, since they're open to the public or they're an employment center, they always require a permit. And anything in the public right of way would also require a permit. So if you're connecting your driveway or repaving something where that connection to the road happens, there's going to be a permit for that. So that brings us to what is the public right of way. We touched on this a little bit. So the street is not technically property that the city owns, but it is property that the city is charged with taking care of. And when it gets given to the city is when property, if there's a new subdivision, for example, that's all property that somebody owns, and then they carve it up into lots, and that street gets dedicated to the city as public right-of-way. It means the public has a right to be there, and it means that all the infrastructure can go in there. So even if the city wanted to, we couldn't sell it, but we have to take care of it. And a lot of times the right-of-way isn't where people think it is. Sometimes you think it's only the places that are paved. Well, there are some areas of the city where actually half of people's front yard happens to be the right-of-way just because of some historical issues. So be sure you know where your property lines are, because sometimes your property or somebody else's property isn't what you think it is. And then, like I said, right-of-way is where we put all the infrastructure. Your water and wastewater pipes are all there. Your power lines are there, stormwater, all that stuff. All right, the money. Who pays for this stuff? The thing about development is that development is not intended to be a burden on the people who already live in the city. Development should pay for itself. And so if somebody builds a new building, it shouldn't cost their neighbor to put that building in. And so naturally, we have to charge fees for that. These are designed to ensure that that person is paying for their own thing. This is important. Infrastructure and personnel are very expensive. And if new development didn't pay for it, then the burden would fall on taxpayers and ratepayers. And if that were the case, then nobody would want anything to grow, and we'd probably stagnate. So this can sometimes make it seem like the city doesn't want growth because we're charging people for it. But it's this delicate balance where we have to make sure that development pays for itself, but we also want to make sure that it's inexpensive enough to develop that it doesn't drive people away. And so it's really tricky sometimes. All right. I also do economic development. There's no comic for this one. It's not funny, apparently. Economic development, Kelsey touched on this a little bit, it's really multifaceted. But one way of thinking of it is really anything that brings jobs and improves the quality of life of the city. So this can be, a lot of this work is relationship based. It's not the city necessarily deciding that something's going to happen, but it's working with property owners and partners. It can be really tricky because we don't own the property that's involved here. The city actually owns very little of the property in the city in comparison. And so we don't get to decide which businesses come in. What's interesting is a lot of times when I talk to residents and when you see things on Facebook or whatever about what economic development should happen, a lot of times you'll get comments like, they should put in a such and such. Well, who's they? There is no they that is deciding all of the businesses that get to be in Sweet Home. What happens is people who want to start a business or who want to build a building find the property and they look at what makes the most sense for them when it comes to their project, and they decide where it's going to be. So we don't have any ability to bring in another grocery store or retail store or anything. All we can do is control or try to help the how fertile our field is, I guess, for planting that seed, right? We can try to help it, make it easier for people to build those things, but we don't get to decide what it is. All right, some ways to improve economic development. Give the people what they want. It's a market, right? You're going to go shopping in the place that has the thing that you want to buy. And so businesses, they want things like land, infrastructure, utilities, workers, they want customers. New residents move to a place, they want quality of life, entertainment, leisure, recreation options, they want jobs, they want shopping. And so any efforts to fulfill these needs is economic development. I talk with businesses a lot, and with industries that want to come in, they want a certain amount of power, they want a certain amount of land, they want to be able to get water at certain rates. It's this mix of things that they want for their business that are going to make it work. And if anything is off in that mix, they're probably going to go somewhere else. The key is for us to have the mix that attracts the people that we want to come here. So how can anyone help with economic development? Since much of it is really relationship based, it's really about connecting people together. If you have friends or acquaintances, you can help. If you have property, you can develop that property, and we would love to work with you on that. Do you want to start a local business? That's a great way to do it. Do you know somebody who runs a business? We'd love to have them relocate here or expand to here. Even if all you have is ideas, tell us about it. You know, we love to have that conversation. And if you don't know anybody, but you have a pulse and you're alive, then shop local. Our businesses could certainly need it. One example that I would love to share is that I really admire is the new coffee shop, Into the Brew, opened up. And one of the things they said about the reasons that they opened up is that they decided that, hey, we should be a part of the solution. We should build something, because too often they were seeing people just talk about what should happen, but they went ahead and did it. So I was really, really appreciative to hear that, because there is no they that's going to put in a coffee shop. There's a you that's going to put in whatever thing that you want. All right, some recent stuff that we've done, and we're really short on time, so I'll cover this really briefly. We did some work on 24th Avenue with a land swap and getting a railroad crossing approved. That'll help get access into the old mill property and the city's property beyond. The downtown streetscape that I mentioned, Paint the Town was a huge thing. We have done special events grants. We have a commercial exterior improvement program where we give grants to commercial for visible improvements to commercial properties, and that's ongoing. We've done some major improvements to Sankey Park that have really improved the quality of life in Sweet Home as well. Currently, we've already talked about the EV charging station. 13th Avenue is also planned to be changed as well to make it a festival street, of an area that's intended to be closed down for events and things. We're doing more work at Sankey Park. City Hall is slated to have a park right here. We've talked about 40th Second and Osage also for a park. Our SEEP program, the commercial exterior improvement program, is ongoing. We're working on, we're almost done with our new parks master plan and with a transportation system plan. And then we're also involved with the Army Corps of Engineers on their plans for the next 20 years of Foster Lake and Green Peter. And then in the future, our planned projects we have, the city has the quarry property, which I won't go into now, but there's a lot there. And then we have a plan for a downtown plaza near the library, as well as various code updates and incentives that we hope will benefit downtown. So, all right, quiz time. Who decides what gets built? Who? You do. Who determines building code requirements? It's the state. What is land use planning? Anyone? Yeah. What can be built where? Who decides what businesses come to Sweet Home? The businesses do. Who pays for development? The development pays for the development. Who owns the land under your street? This one's a trick question. Sort of. The city takes care of it, but the public owns it. So it actually, if we tried to ever get rid of that street, it would go to the properties on either side. And then I'm replacing my fence. Do I need a permit? Yes. Okay. Any questions? All right. Who's next?
Awesome. I like it. Sorry. So go back one. I'm going to talk a little bit about, this is our wastewater plant. It is down there on Pleasant. What's that? Oh, sorry. Well, okay. I'm Greg Springman. I've been your public works director for probably the last 7 years. I'm still here. I'm doing a lot of other things with the wastewater plant and our water plant. We've got a lot of challenges there. So I'm spending a lot of my time there. I've been doing public works for about 39 years. So I've been doing this a long time. The majority of it has been spent working in the water and wastewater industry. And I love this community. I've been here for a while and I plan to retire here. So we'll get on with that. So the first picture, go back. I want to talk about this picture. I want to thank Adam for that picture, right? It's really nice. This is our aging wastewater plant. It was originally built this little smaller area back in 1943. And then in the 70s, we had an expansion that I think it did some upgrading with some filters. And then in 93, we had a new clarifier that was put in that gave some capacity. There really wasn't a lot of attention put into our aeration basins. And so this new project, which is over $60 million, will retrofit this whole plant. We'll be using some of the concrete that's here, but basically we'll be building all the way up to the front of the property with a new admin building, all new tanks. Kind of looking forward to that because the old plant is challenging to run. So switch over. Some of the things that we do. So what does Public Works do? We operate and maintain all of our services, right? So we have water, we have sewer, we have streets, we have parks, we have stormwater. Some of the things that we need to let you know, and it came out of with the drawdown, is that people were concerned that the water that was basically coming out of the wastewater plant that we're bringing into the system, there was a lot of concerns about what our water quality was like. And so I just want to point out, for our intake for our water plant, we draw directly out of the dam, okay, right at Foster. And that line goes into the water plant. We then treat it, and then we push it out into the distribution system. That distribution system then goes into the reservoirs, and then you guys draw it into your system. You use it in your house, it then goes into your sewer system. It goes through a collection system. It goes down to Pleasant Valley at our wastewater plant, and then it gets treated there. So go ahead to the next one. And that's the outfall. And so I just want to point out that our intake and our outfall are totally separated by about 4 miles, okay? Go ahead, next one. Some of the things that we do, water distribution, go to the next one. Water treatment, keep going. The water distribution system consists of about 49 miles. It consists of mains, services, valving, hydrants. We also have some pump stations, those pump stations provide water to those elevations for the reservoirs. It is also, sorry, I need to catch my breath here. OHA regulates our water system. We have to do multiple samples monthly for coliform. We have to supply that to the state on a monthly basis. If we have complaints or we follow up with those complaints, we also have hydrant flushing. So if you have color in your water, then we need to go out and flush those hydrants to ensure that we have good water quality. Meter reading, is that for me? Awesome, thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. With our hydrant, we do a lot of flushing, right? Make sure our water quality is good. Water meter reading is where we do a lot of our, where the water then goes into your house, right? After it goes into the service, it goes to the meter, and then you get a bill once a month based on the total amount of usage. That meter reading is done by us. We used to have a service, if you possibly saw them, that drove a scooter around. Anybody see those scooters going around? 2 years ago, we invested about $700,000 and we redid our whole metering system. Now we can drive around in town. the computer actually picks up those readings, so we can read the whole town within 2, 3, 4 hours. If we have leaks, these meters can actually tell us that you have a leak immediately. And I think we've even on occasion had to reach out to people that need to call a plumber because it can get real expensive really quick. And so this has been a really good thing for us. Another thing that it's done is that it allows us to see our water loss. When I first got here 7 years ago, our water loss was 45%. Industry standards 12%. We're kind of hitting that mark right now. But for every, let's say we needed to produce 1 million gallons of water a day, we were having to produce about 1.5 million gallons a day. And so we don't have to do that anymore. So on the water treatment side, we bring that into our plant. There's a lot of chemistry that has to be done. And what our staff does, our operators, is they determine the amount of soda ash and alum that it's going to take through bench testing. So on one day, our water turbidity may be 10, 15, but during the drawdowns, our turbidity's got up to 200, 300, 400. And so for operators to be able to do those bench testing, it just gets like every hour. They're having to figure out what that chemistry is. And so it gets pretty labor intensive. Doesn't mean that we can't make water. It just means that it takes a lot more. After we make that water, it goes into a reservoir at the treatment plant, which holds about 500,000, and then it gets pushed out into the system. You guys then use it, and what doesn't get used then goes to reservoirs for storage. When the plant shuts off, then the reservoirs feed the town. So they kind of work in unison together. At the plant, they also disinfect your water. And if you notice during Green Peter drawdown, we were really challenged with how much chlorine that we were going to have to put in our system. Some days we were having to bump it up higher. Other days we were able to back it off. And there was a lot of complaints associated with that. So once that occurred, and we were able to figure out how to make water at the higher turbidities, things kind of flattened out a little bit. And so we were able to consistently make water. We were doing a lot more flushing into the system as well to ensure that you guys had good water quality. We were also reporting to OHA. Oregon Health Authority regulates our water system. Any coliform bacteria samples that may come back hot, we have like 20 spots that we test throughout town. And so if we get a sample, which happens occasion, we have to then do some sampling protocols. And usually once we go back and sample, those things kind of clear up. One other thing that we do with the water treatment plant is our annual consumer report. Excuse me. The consumer report is a document that's required by OHA that goes to you guys' house. We also provide it online. It's in your water bill that you can assess it online and look at it. But it's a report that we have to provide to show any violations that our system's operating and that any changes or anything that has been made. Also, education, like what do you do if you have a major leak, those type of things. And so there's a lot of information that's in that report. And again, if you have a leak, right, or if you have an emergency with your water system, call the city, call Public Works, after hours, call PD. We will get that call. So wastewater treatment, talked a little bit about the plant. We also do collections. And so you think of it this way, we have a lake, we draw water in, we take to the plant, we treat it. We put it into the distribution system, you then use it, it goes into your house, and then it goes into the collection system. The collection system is a grouping of pipes. It's about 54 miles, I think we have, which consists of anything from 8-inch mains up to 24, I think is our largest. You have the mains, you have manholes, You also have laterals that tap from the main to your house. The city's responsible for the main and the lateral up to the property line. It would be your responsibility to make sure that it's maintained and cleaned all the way. And so if you ever have a blockage, anything like that, give us a call. We're not a plumber. We'll be more than happy to come out and look at it. If it's on your side, we'll let you know that. We have nothing invested, right? Other than the fact to give you good service. So go back. So wastewater collections. We clean sewer mains. That is done on an annual basis. You'll see this giant truck with a snorkel on it, if you've seen it around town, that has hose on the front end. That's what does a lot of our cleaning. That also does our storm line cleaning too. We also do sewer main CCTV inspection. That is a camera that we can actually put down in the sewer and go and look in laterals. We can find cracks. We usually use that under situations where we've got a blockage or we've got something broken and we need to find out exactly what we need to do from the inside without excavating. They also respond to sewer system overflows. They do the cleanup response. We also do annual flow monitoring. We do it in the winter and we do it in the summer. Summer, like everything here, it's dry, right? So our flow is a lot less. In the wintertime, we get a lot of water that infiltrates our sewer system. At one point, we were getting over 22 million gallons a day into our wastewater plant. Now it's down to about 8 or 10 because of a bunch of work that we did many, many years ago. So flow monitoring is extremely important. That knows where we're at capacity-wise, and we know that our treatment plant has enough room to treat the wastewater. The treatment plant, we are very lucky here. We only have one influent pump station, and that is at the plant. Everything else is gravity fed, which means we don't have pumps, everything's down at the plant. We also have process laboratory, and what that means is every day operators are collecting samples, they're testing them for the amount of solids that are in there, how much have to be wasted, those type of things. And so there's ongoing laboratory process because it is at the wastewater plant a biological process. DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, regulates the wastewater side. So you have Oregon Health Authority on the water, you have DEQ on the wastewater side. Also at the plant, we have solids processing and handling. This year we installed a new screw press that has minimized how much sludge that we're actually taking to the landfill, and that's where all of our sludge goes. That we were probably taking out about 3 to 4 dumpsters a week. Now we're doing 1 to 2 because this new screw press is that much more efficient. The last thing is the treatment plant plays an intricate role in sewer overflows when it happens in the community, but it also when it happens at the plant. There's reporting that has to happen, there's DEQ has to be called, and so there's a process that we have to do when those occur. So streets. What we do is we do street sweeping. Everybody's seen our new street sweeper. We do pothole repair. If you guys been on Pleasant Valley, you saw some long overdue repairs that just happened there. We also fix all the water utility cuts. So if our water department or sewer, they go out and have to make a repair, cut in the asphalt, streets will actually do that repair. We do street signage maintenance. We also do, if you notice along Main Street and Long, we have a lot of city trash cans and in our parks. They do that every day. They're emptying out trash cans. They do all the right-of-way that Blair talked about, the cleanup, vegetation removal, because in Oregon, everything grows. Emergency road closures. If chief has an accident, there's an accident and they need us to come out and close a road for whatever reasons, we come out and we help with that. Signage, conage, whatever they need. We also do traffic control for the medians for beautification. You'll see that happening on Tuesdays usually. And we do all the parades. We do all the lane closures and safety corridors. Parks, we basically maintain parks. We kind of have a split division with the CAD department. They kind of handle all the administrative stuff. We are the muscle, right? And so parks, what we do is we maintain all the facilities as well, like this building, library, PD, all the other facilities. City parks, we got restroom maintenance, playground inspection and repair. That's important because we have kiddos that are sliding down slides and those things get wore out from time to time. So we have to stay on top of that. Irrigation systems, we're starting to install those more and more. Again, vegetation maintenance, path maintenance, lighting, security. We help with events. Graffiti removal is big in town. We've been having some incidents lately, so we've been dealing with that. We also interact with outside vendors for a lot of different things. So, stormwater, this is kind of new for us. Even though we've had stormwater, we're just recently starting to get some funding in this area, and so we're kind of in our infancy. But that same Vactor that cleans our sewer, cleans our stormwater and catch basins. We also have that same CCTV truck and sewer that does inspections in our collection system. We also do leaf pickup, which you have seen. The streets does it, but it's in conjunctions with stormwater because DEQ looks at it as we're getting materials out of the waterways. And so our streets come, if you call in and I think it's middle of October through the middle of December, and you have a pile of leaves in your yards, put it out in your right of way, call us. We'll be more than happy to come and pick it up and haul it off for you. We probably do 400 to 500 pickups every season. So, and it keeps growing and growing. Emergency catch basin response, as if during rain events, we get, leaves or other debris in our storm drain systems that get backed up. We don't want that running onto your property. And so we need to get out there as quick as possible. If you experience those things, give us a call. If it's after hours, give PD a call. They will be more than happy to call us. We also do stormwater flow monitoring for capacity reasons. That's usually coordinated with engineering. Again, oh, we're getting down here. Quiz. Oregon Health Authority regulates the city's Sweet Home's water treatment effluent to ensure it is safe to drink. True. The city's wastewater treatment plant outfall pipe discharges into the South Santiam River downstream of the city's water treatment plant intake. That's very true. And that's all I have. Let's see, is there more here? Oh, geez. I thought I only had two. Okay, street cuts. We do repairs for utility cuts for the wastewater division. Parks division is responsible for vegetation maintenance at parks. True. We do have vegetation for everything, streets and parks. Questions? Sorry about my voice. I'm a little. Coffin Butte right now. I think we were taking it there, but we have a contract with Sweet Home. It's up to them to figure out where to go and get best prices. And so we pay directly to them to have them haul it off. No, it's right now it's landfill. It's actually cheapest for us, small as we are. And again, sanitation wants to make money off that as well, right? And so they're going to find the best rate and the best place to take it. So, but right now I think even sometimes they take it up somewhere in a landfill up in the Columbia. So, any other questions? Come on, you got to have something. You know everything. Yeah, so that's a good question. So when we take trees, vegetation, we also, all the leaves that we pick up from the community, we also, all the mowing from our parks, we all take those down to Quarry Park in an area. And once a year, we have all that ground up. And so we also have a lot of other materials, gravel that we've been kind of trying to get rid of and sell. And that some of those funds come back to parks. Same thing with this material. There's also firewood down there that we can actually, we have loaded up in a trailer. If somebody want to make an offer, we could then send it out and you can make, bring firewood to your house. And so there are a lot of materials that we collect over the year that we're not just taking to the dump, that we're doing something with. Some of those materials come back into our parks, especially the leaves and grass. After a couple of years, they get really dark and black, and we've actually seeded some of our parks with that. And so everything that we grind goes on South Hills trails and other places for vegetation control. But we have a lot. So, yeah. Thank you. It's not over yet. Yes.
Upgrade facility for the waste and the water, or just the water?
Just the waste.
Just the waste.
Just go back to that, the wastewater plant. Just for that. Down at Pleasant Valley. So after you bring water into your house and you use it in your sink, toilet, bathtub, whatever, and it goes down the drain, it goes into the collection system, it goes to this place. And that's all it is. It's all the wastewater from the community, and that is the only thing treated there. And it's a biological process where water is more of a chemistry type process. Yeah. Go back to that next picture, where it talks about the dam. There, one more. There, thank you. I don't have it exact, but this is the dam, right? This is 59, 59. You continue down the river, but you follow, there's an intake. Yep, there's the building right here. So that intake goes down and it continues, and over by Radiator Supply House on 47th, there is a building with an intake structure that will then open up, has valves and actuators that we can then control it with the water plant, and we actually bring that water directly into the plant from there. And so it is direct connection. Nobody else is on it. It's all raw water. It's not treated, and it directly comes to us. Yes, sir. Absolutely not. Not Sweet Homes. It goes down to Lebanon. It goes down to Waterloo, Sotaville, after it's been treated and met. And yes, the plant is old and we've had violations, right? But we're doing a lot of things to prepare it for the next 3 years when we get into construction as well. Yes. It's a great question. So we are very close to submitting our application. Application is done. We're completing a couple of financial documents, and once those financial documents are done, we will put it all together, and WIFIA is waiting. An email went out a couple weeks ago letting them know that we're finishing it. So once that's done, then we'll ship it to them, and it could take 60, 100 days. They're going to do their own process. There's going to be some agencies look at to make sure that the process or the plant and the project itself meets a lot of the environmental, federal environmental regulations and stuff. And so when you're asking the federal government, hey, I want $60 million, they're going to make sure that you've hit every checkbox. And so it's a long process, but we're getting towards the end of that road, and it's happening. And so answer that question. I'm hoping that we submit that application here within the next couple months, and that we get contract docs out probably with another month or two after that, and then we're going. So once we get the contractor on, our engineer is finishing the final comments from our own internal review, also DEQ's review, and there's some couple other agencies. And so those comments are right now being put back into that project. Also, we're at 90% right now, putting the finishing touches on the outfall design that will be inserted in with that. And so the Mixon, working with Mixon and other companies that put that report together. And again, when you're actually asking to do work in the river, it's a difficult process because they just want to make sure that everything's right. And so we're almost done with that. Like I said, 90%. So any other questions? Well, thank you for putting up with me. Who's next?
Way more fun than you. I'm Angela Clegg. I am, well, let's start. I started as the planning project assistant. Then I became the associate planner. Then I was tourism and economic development coordinator. And just recently I became the planning and building manager. Did I get all that right? Okay. But the reason why volunteering is actually something great for me to talk about, my introduction to the city was as a volunteer. I actually was on at the time the Parks Board, and I was chairman of the Parks Board. It is now Park and Tree Committee. So that was my introduction, and the work that I did with the Parks Board ended up bringing me into the city. So volunteering can lead actually to careers. So I highly, pardon me. Excuse me, I've been waiting for that the whole time we've been sitting here. So we want to talk about who volunteers, why you volunteer, what you volunteer for, and how you volunteer. I'm going to whip through because these guys all talked way too long, and I know you're all falling asleep. So a lot of our volunteer opportunities are for people of all ages and abilities. One of the biggest examples we had was Paint the Town. We had everyone from little kids to mature adults. And all different abilities, people painting, with the tape and cleaning brushes. And so we usually, most of our opportunities, we have, an opportunity for anyone and everyone to join in. And we've got, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, a couple different opportunities coming on that people can volunteer for. I'm going to sneeze again. Why should you volunteer? It's good for you, reduces stress, makes you healthier. Saves resources. A lot of the things we do, like some of our parks projects, our Sankey Park Phase 3, we actually had people volunteer, which becomes part of our match to help us, put the playground structure together. Saves on the citizens of Sweet Home money by us being able to get volunteers to help us with that. Another one of the things I do is we do the Harvest Festival. We do different events, and we have a lot of people that volunteer to help us do that, which we're very short-staffed. We have one of us in each category, in each department, so it helps kind of fill in those places where we are lacking in an actual staff. Volunteers gain professional experience. Me, for example, I ended up in the city through the parks. It brings people together. It promotes personal growth and self-esteem. Volunteering strengthens your community. One of the things that we noticed with the Paint the Town project, we had many members of our community come together. People got to know each other, different business entities. We had councilmen, we had staff. So it brought the community together for a large project throughout the city. You get a chance to give back. There's many different ways you can give back in your community. Besides working for the city, I also volunteer on a couple other boards. So it's my way of giving back to the city. Volunteering encourages civil responsibility, and you make a difference, making a difference in this community. Look at some of our parks, look at some of the work other people do in here. I mean, I've lived here 15 years now. No, I'm not a native, and I get reminded that a lot. But I have lived here long enough to see a lot of change in this community, and a lot of it is because of our citizens and the volunteer work that they do. Go ahead, Adam. Opportunities. Sankey Park Phase 2, those are ones that we've done, which was cleaning up Sankey Park. We put the bathrooms in, we put the playground in. You all have ADA paths now. Harvest Festival is one. I happen to do Harvest Festival, so we have a lot of volunteer help with that. There's a lot of library programs that Megan brought up. The committees, we have a lot of committees. Beautification Committee, Park and Tree Committee, Planning Commission, a Community Health Committee, Arts and Culture, Public and Traffic Safety, is that Budget Committee, and Library. I thought I got that backwards. Go ahead. Like I said, I'm just going to whip through this. So future opportunities, and I had to bring my notes so I remembered to say this. So one of the projects we are thinking about doing is painted crosswalks. And now this is just an example that I got, but we have some ideas for our festival street, as they talked about, 13th Avenue, and to correspond with some projects down at the library of painting the parking lot in the library to look like books. So that will all kind of work together, and I think it's going to be super fun opportunity. Murals through the Arts and Culture Committee, murals for downtown. You'll be starting to see some of those come through town. That's another volunteer opportunity, especially on the arts and culture. Quarry Park activities. So I've been here for a really long time. One of the things I used to do was outdoor school, salmon watch, and I used to take high school students and we did a lot of surveying. Corey Park was one of the places we actually surveyed. We surveyed plants, animals, fish. It's a lot of opportunities to go down there. If you ever go to Sankey Park, you will see signs. They're right by the river. They talk about the flora and fauna of that. Students did that. They went out and they surveyed, they put all that together for educational purposes. So there's a lot of fun things that we can do, like I said, for all different ages. Some of these things, we're still coming up with them. Sankey Park Phase 3, we're working on that right now, and that's going to include an ADA path from Lower Sankey Park to Upper Sankey Park, and there's going to be opportunities for people to help us work on that project. Sorry, I'm whipping through this as fast as I can. How do you sign up? Boards and committees, you can go on our website. I'm not going to read it all off, but if you go on our website and the tabs that both Cecily and Adam brought up there, you can go in there and it leads you right to it. Volunteers, we have a volunteer form that you fill out. You can get it to us. There's opportunities. If you just come in and say, hey, I want to volunteer, we can try to fit you in with the project that we're doing and work with you with the people that are the point of contacts for those opportunities. And they change all the time. So we don't have one consistent thing constantly, but we do have a lot of different opportunities at different times of the year. Okay. See, I kept my time. Thank you all very much. What does this image have to do with volunteering? And there's more than one answer. Anybody know what this has to do with volunteering? That's one. Kind of, yeah. So there's a two-part to this. Part of it, Chief kind of covered, is that when you see something like this, it doesn't help if you go on Facebook and complain about it. What helps is if you report it, say, hey, we found some graffiti on this area. We need somebody. Chief can take a report. We can get Public Works on it. The other part of it is volunteering to help paint over it and clean it up. So there's multiple opportunities, voicing your opinions on Facebook, great, but we don't know to clean this up if we don't have a report to do it. And that's helpful. Correct. And so that's why I chose this picture, is because a lot of times people don't understand that we don't know to clean this up if we don't know it's there, and we can't, there's not a lot of us, it's a small town. And so unless we're made aware of this, we want to clean this up just as much as everybody else does. So it helps us if you call into the police department, call into Public Works, and then we can actually help take care of that. I think that's it. Ha ha. I know, my 5 minutes. I'm on it. Thanks. Any questions?
Okay, good job, Angela. So I'll be super fast because she just kind of covered some of that, but moving forward, like Angela just mentioned, we have a whole bunch of other volunteer opportunities as well that are in the process of getting developed. I haven't listed all of them because some of the other ones that we want to talk about are youth and other programs like that as well. But one of the things are neighborhood improvements, being able to help your neighbor out, help with potential code enforcement issues, clean up areas that could be wildfire concerns and so forth. Other things are, like Angela just mentioned, we have a lot of parks about to come forward. So if you want to help out with parks, even if it's just a weekend project, that can make a really big difference in us getting a project moving forward. And most of these have to be funded by grants. These grants can only go towards parks projects, but they always require a match. But one of the things that allows us to make that match is in-kind services. So by doing volunteer work, you're actually helping to pay for a park. Painted Crosswalks, we already talked about, but that's going to make a huge difference in our downtown core on making it a little bit more interesting and exciting and bringing in those residents, just like we talked about as that economic development piece, making people want to come to that downtown area and want to live here and stay in Sweet Home. Emergency management. We're going to continue to see additional emergencies. We're going to see additional wildfires. We're going to have other issues that happen. The more you can be involved in this and help with that, the more we can come together as a community. Also, the existing committees. We have a lot of openings in committees. They come up periodically. By going ahead and applying for these committees, you get to really voice your opinions about what you want to see the city do. And you also get to really know what's going on. You mentioned that you weren't aware of what was happening with 10th Avenue. That's one of those things that has been in discussion with the community engagement for a few years now. But it's really hard to always get dialed in and know kind of what's going on there. By volunteering, sometimes you get some of that information beforehand as well. We talked about ODOT already, so I'm not going to jump into this, but this is going to be an ongoing issue. And so having volunteer support as the city is working through this is always going to be productive. We've gotten further, honestly, than we have in 40 years. And that has just occurred in the last year. I was hoping to go ahead and see this through, but as I'm leaving, I'm hoping to hand off this to some of you who are willing to take it on. So some of the things that we've been talking about are having some volunteer leaders. As we mentioned, there are not many of us. You know, we've talked about with traffic and so forth, and our traffic officers can't be everywhere at once. Our public works can't be everywhere at once. So what we really need are some people who are also willing to help step up and manage some of these projects. So we're looking for volunteer citizen ambassadors who would be sort of the volunteer coordinators who would be willing to take on maybe 2 projects a year and be maybe you just do it for 1 year, but be a liaison between the city and the volunteers and help do that. And we do have some funding for stipends. So if you're interested in that, please get back to us so that we can talk to you about that. And it's a great way to be involved in your community without a long-term commitment. That is not to say that we don't love our current volunteers or that our current volunteers can't do these roles. The current volunteers are one of the things that makes Sweet Home amazing. And so huge kudos to everybody who's volunteering. And if you're in this room, you're probably already part of that as well. But please tell your friends, we need volunteers of all ages. We do have a lot of volunteers who are retired, who are wanting to slow down a little bit on how much they're volunteering. So we need some other folks to step up to help support them as well. And we'd like youth as well. Bring your kids. You saw a bunch of kids in some of the other volunteer pictures. Some of them are mine. It's actually a really fun activity. So want to thank you all for being here. We are done, but we have an opportunity. We'll stay around for any final questions. And if you all have any final questions, thank you for your patience. I know we were 45 minutes over. So really well done on all of you staying here. This was our first Citizens Academy, so we weren't sure how long we were going to be, but again, thank you, and open up to questions, not just for me, but for any of staff too. Okay, so that is such a good question. And that also leads me to the reminder of, I mentioned it beforehand, but we have a survey. And one of the things that we would really love is for you all to fill out what you would like this to look at like. We'll probably do this intro again, but then we'll also probably do like a second one. So if you have already completed the first one, then you'd be able to move to the second. If you haven't, we'd probably recommend taking the first one. However, I will not be here. So that is going to be sort of a question for those of you who have attended, as well as for our current staff and new leaders. Multiple years. Steve Guy. Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, please try to fill out your survey, and thank you all so much.